I'm Angela 30, and I've spent my life being the responsible daughter, while my sister Mia was adored for simply existing. Since 16, I've saved every penny working multiple jobs through college, building a financial safety net that hit seven figures. My parents always treated my savings like a child's piggy bank, but I never imagined they'd actually steal from me until my birthday dinner, when they proudly announced they'd secured my sister's future with my money. If you're watching this right now, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to join our community. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had family take advantage of your success. I read every single one. I grew up in a spacious colonial-style home in Westport, Connecticut, where appearances mattered more than authenticity. My father, Robert, a real estate developer with an impressive client roster and an even more impressive ego-belief status, was everything. My mother, Catherine, a former Miss Connecticut turned country club socialite, reinforced this with her meticulous attention to our family's public image. Our life looked picture perfect from the outside: the successful businessmen, the beautiful wife, and their two daughters. But inside our home, the family dynamic was anything but equal. I was a planned child born when my parents were establishing their place in Connecticut society. My early years were normal enough: dance lessons, play dates with children of my parents' friends, private elementary school. But everything changed when I was 5, and my mother unexpectedly became pregnant with Mia. From the moment my sister arrived, the family orbit shifted dramatically. Mia was unplanned, but instantly became the golden child, the baby who could do no wrong. Where I was expected to be responsible, disciplined, and achievement-oriented, Mia was encouraged to express herself and follow her passions. This translated to my parents indulging her every whim while holding me to increasingly demanding standards. The contrast in our treatment was obvious even to outsiders. When I turned 8, I received educational books and a savings bond from my parents. When Mia turned 8, she got a lavish party at the country club with a professional magician, a custom-made dress, and a purebred Maltese puppy she'd been begging for. When I quietly pointed out the disparity to my mother, she patted my head and said, "Mia needs more encouragement, sweetie. You're naturally motivated." By age 10, I had internalized a crucial lesson: if I wanted something, I needed to earn it myself. That Christmas, when my wish for a new bicycle was dismissed as too expensive, while Mia received an elaborate dollhouse that cost twice as much, I began offering to rake leaves for neighbors. I saved every quarter and dollar until spring, when I had enough to buy a secondhand bike from a garage sale. Rather than being proud of my initiative, my parents seemed embarrassed by my unnecessary efforts and insisted I keep that old thing in the garage rather than the front driveway where friends might see it. When I was 12, I overheard a conversation that confirmed what I'd long suspected. My parents were discussing educational funds over dinner while they thought I was upstairs. "We should increase Mia's college fund," my father was saying. "With her artistic talents, she might want to study abroad or attend a specialized program." "What about Angela's college fund?" my mother asked, though her tone suggested the question was perfunctory. "Angela will get scholarships," my father replied dismissively. "She's practical. She'll probably choose a state school with a good business program. Mia needs more options. She's special." I remember standing frozen on the stairs, a crushing weight settling in my chest. I wasn't special. I was practical, reliable, useful, but not special. The next day, I walked to the local library and checked out every book they had on scholarships, financial aid, and college planning. If I was going to be on my own, I needed to prepare. That same week, I started a neighborhood car washing service, charging $10 per vehicle and saving every penny in a metal box hidden in my closet. By the end of that summer, I had nearly $300, my first real taste of financial independence. As I entered my teens, the pattern continued. Mia joined expensive competitive dance teams, attended summer arts programs, and received private music lessons. I joined free school clubs, volunteered for leadership positions that would look good on college applications, and maintained a perfect GPA. When Mia's dance costumes and competition fees strained the family budget, my father would casually mention tightening our belts, which inevitably meant any activities I wanted to pursue were deemed unnecessary expenses. My defining memory from this period came when I won the state mathematics competition at 15. The award ceremony fell on the same day as one of Mia's minor dance recitals. Without hesitation, my parents attended Mia's performance. My math teacher drove me to the ceremony where I accepted my award, a $5,000 scholarship for future education, in front of an audience of strangers. When I arrived home clutching my certificate and checked my parents were celebrating Mia's participation award with cake and champagne for the adults, my achievement was acknowledged with distracted congratulations and quickly forgotten. That night, I made two promises to myself. I would never depend on my parents for financial support, and I would never allow myself to be financially vulnerable to anyone. The scholarship money became the foundation of my long-term financial strategy, though I didn't fully understand then just how seriously I would come to take that mission. Looking back, I realized my childhood laid the groundwork for both my financial discipline and the deep-seated insecurities that drove it. I learned early that my value in my family was tied to my utility, not my inherent worth. Money became more than currency to me. It represented security, independence, and a validation my family never provided. The harsh lessons of my childhood would fuel my determination for years to come, propelling me toward financial independence, even as they left emotional scars that would take much longer to heal. The summer before my junior year of high school, I decided it was time to get a real job. I was 16, the minimum working age in Connecticut, and determined to establish more financial independence before college applications began. I landed a position at Barnes & Noble working 20 hours a week, shelving books, organizing displays, and helping customers find their next great read. My parents' reaction was predictably dismissive. "Isn't this going to interfere with your studies?" my father asked, though he had never shown such concern about Mia's time-consuming dance schedule. "A job at a bookstore. How quaint," my mother added with a tight smile that suggested she found the idea of her daughter working retail slightly embarrassing. "I suppose it's just a phase." What they didn't understand was that this phase was the beginning of my financial education. My first paycheck, $163.52 after taxes, felt like tangible freedom in my hands. Instead of spending it, I marched directly to the local credit union and opened my first independent bank account. The account required a parent's signature since I was a minor, but I convinced my father to sign the paperwork by presenting it as a responsible way to save for college expenses that would save him money in the long run. What I didn't tell him was that I had specifically chosen a credit union where he didn't have connections, and I had the statement sent to a P.O. box I rented with my second paycheck. After seeing how my parents occasionally borrowed from my childhood piggy bank for Mia's emergencies never to be repaid, I wasn't taking any chances with my hard-earned money. That first account became my financial laboratory. I created a meticulous tracking system in a spiral notebook recording every dollar earned and every cent spent. I established a rule for myself. 80% of every paycheck would be saved, 15% invested in my education or skills, and only 5% used for personal spending. While my friends blew their paychecks on mall shopping sprees and movie tickets, I bought finance books from the bargain section using my employee discount and taught myself the basics of budgeting and saving. Meanwhile, Mia's expensive hobbies continued to expand. At 14, she decided she wanted to become a photographer, prompting my parents to purchase a $3,000 camera and lens set. When her interest waned after a few months, they enrolled her in private voice lessons at $100 per session. By 15, she was taking both acting and pottery classes with my parents, cheerfully funding each new passion. The summer before my senior year, my parents called a family meeting to discuss college plans. I arrived prepared with a portfolio containing my academic achievements, scholarship prospects, and financial projections for various universities. "We've been discussing your education options." My father began his tone suggesting the decision had already been made. "With Mia's artistic pursuits requiring specialized training, we think it makes the most financial sense for you to attend UConn or Central Connecticut. They have excellent business programs, and you could live at home to save on expenses." "What about Cornell or Penn? I have the grades and extracurriculars for the Ivy League," I countered, pulling out my carefully researched options. My mother sighed. "Angela, be practical. Even with scholarships, those schools cost a fortune. We need to be realistic about our family resources." "What about Mia's college plans?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Mia's talents require the right environment to flourish, my father replied without hesitation. If she gets into Juilliard or RISD, we'll find a way to make it work. Her gifts are special. The message was clear. My academic achievements were expected and ordinary. Mia's artistic interests, however inconsistent, were exceptional and worthy of investment. I nodded politely through the rest of the meeting, but internally, I was more determined than ever to fund my own education. I spent my senior year in a frenzy of activity, maintaining my perfect GPA, leading 3 student organizations, working 30 hours a week between my bookstore job and a weekend position as a math tutor, and applying for every scholarship I could find. I wrote essays on weekends, interviewed during lunch breaks, and spent holidays completing applications, while my family celebrated around me. The strategy paid off. By graduation, I had secured over $175,000 in scholarship money from various sources, enough to attend Cornell's business program, with minimal additional expenses. When the acceptance and scholarship letters arrived, my parents seemed genuinely surprised and slightly uncomfortable. Their narrative of me attending a state school while living at home had been upended, and they struggled to reconcile my success with their perception of me as the practical, unremarkable daughter. My high school graduation ceremony should have been a moment of triumph. Instead, it became another reminder of where I stood in the family hierarchy. After I received my diploma as valedictorian with highest honors, my parents spent more time praising Mia for making the junior honor roll than acknowledging my achievements. At the small family celebration afterward, my father's toast focused primarily on how proud they were of both girls and how excited they were for Mia's upcoming dance recital. As I prepared to leave for Cornell that August, I made one final visit to my credit union. My account balance stood at $12,487.63. Every dollar I had earned and saved over 2 years of consistent work. This money represented my emergency fund, my safety net in case the scholarships fell through or unexpected expenses arose. As I departed for Ithaca, I left behind not just my childhood home, but also the expectation that my family would ever truly see or value me for who I was. My financial independence had become both my shield and my identity. In the rearview mirror as I drove away, I could see my parents waving from the porch, my mother already turning toward Mia, with her arm around my sister's shoulders. I felt a pang of sadness mixed with determination. I might never be the favorite daughter, but I would make sure I never needed to be. Money couldn't buy my parents equal affection, but it could buy me something perhaps more valuable in the long run: complete freedom from their conditional support. Cornell's ivy-covered buildings and prestigious reputation belied the financial struggle many of its students faced behind closed doors. While my classmates ordered late-night pizza without checking their bank balances and planned spring break trips to Cancun, I was working 3 part-time jobs and carefully portioning ramen noodles to stretch my food budget. My first semester, I secured positions at the main library circulation desk as a teaching assistant for an introductory economics course, and on weekends at a local coffee shop. Between classes, studying, and working, I averaged 4 hours of sleep a night. The exhaustion was worth it. Every paycheck represented another step toward true financial independence. It was in Professor Diane Williams' financial markets course during my sophomore year that my approach to money fundamentally changed. Unlike most professors who taught theoretical concepts, Professor Williams had worked on Wall Street for 15 years before entering academia. She spoke about money not just as an academic subject, but as a tool for personal freedom. Most people think of wealth in terms of consumption. What you can buy, she told our class one day. Real wealth is about options, what you don't have to do. Every dollar you save isn't just money. It's a piece of future freedom. After class, I lingered to ask her questions about practical investing strategies for someone with limited capital. Instead of offering a quick answer, she invited me to her office hours. "You're thinking about this more seriously than most of your peers," she observed during our meeting. "What's your goal?" "Financial independence," I replied without hesitation. "I never want to rely on anyone else for support." Something in my tone must have revealed more than I intended, because her expression softened. "That's a worthy goal, but it sounds like there's a story behind it." Perhaps it was exhaustion, Or maybe it was finding someone who truly understood the value of financial self-reliance. But I found myself sharing pieces of my family dynamic. Professor Williams listened without judgment. Angela, your drive is admirable, but be careful not to let your past determine your relationship with money entirely, she cautioned. Financial independence should be a tool for freedom, not just a reaction to pain. Her words stayed with me, though it would be years before I truly understood them. More immediately valuable was her practical guidance. She introduced me to investment concepts beyond basic savings, index funds, dollar cost averaging, and the power of compound interest. She also connected me with the university's investment club, where I learned to analyze stocks and understand market trends alongside peers who shared my interests. With her encouragement, I took my first real investment risk at 20. I invested $2,000, roughly half of my emergency fund at the time, in a technology ETF that Professor Williams had mentioned was undervalued. The decision kept me awake for nights, my stomach churning at the thought of losing money I had worked so hard to earn. 6 months later, when the investment had doubled, I experienced an intoxicating rush that no shopping spree could match. I wasn't just saving money, I was making it work for me. By junior year, I had established relationships with several financial advisors through networking events and informational interviews. These professionals normally wouldn't spend time on a college student with limited capital, but my knowledge and unusual determination for someone my age intrigued them. One advisor at a boutique firm in Ithaca took me under his wing, offering guidance in exchange for occasional administrative help at his office. Most kids your age are trying to figure out where to go for spring break, he remarked once. You're building a retirement portfolio. What's the hurry? I'm not interested in retirement yet, I explained. I'm interested in options. While my classmates spent summers working as camp counselors or taking unpaid internships subsidized by their parents, I strategically pursued paid internships at financial firms. The summer after my junior year, I landed a position at Goldman Sachs in New York City. The salary was modest by Wall Street standards, but felt like a fortune to me, and the experience was invaluable. I lived in the cheapest apartment I could find in Washington Heights, brought lunch from home every day, and saved nearly 70% of my earnings. More important than the money was the network I built that summer. I absorbed everything I could from the analysts and associates around me, staying late to help with projects, and asking thoughtful questions that demonstrated my interest and aptitude. By the end of the summer, I had several mentors who continued to provide advice throughout my senior year and became crucial connections after graduation. When I graduated from Cornell at 22, I had something beyond my business degree that set me apart from most of my peers: financial literacy and a six-figure investment portfolio. Through aggressive saving, strategic investments, and the compounding returns from starting early, I had accumulated just over $117,000 in assets. While friends moved back home to save money or took jobs based primarily on starting salaries, I had created options for myself. My parents attended my college graduation, of course, making appropriate noises about how proud they were. But their questions focused primarily on my starting salary and whether I would be sending money home to help the family, particularly with Mia's upcoming expenses at Rhode Island School of Design, where she had decided for now to study fashion design. Your sister's education is very specialized, my mother explained as we sat at an overpriced restaurant after the ceremony. The materials alone for her fashion courses cost thousands per semester. I smiled politely and changed the subject, not mentioning that I had already signed a lease on an apartment in Manhattan and had no intention of subsidizing Mia's latest interest. I had learned that financial boundaries, like emotional ones, were necessary for self-preservation. What my family didn't know, what no one knew except my financial advisors, was that my modest portfolio was just the beginning. I had developed a comprehensive financial strategy that would guide my decisions for the next decade. While my degree was in business administration, my real education had been in wealth building, and I was about to put those lessons to work in ways that would have made Professor Williams proud. I left Cornell with more than knowledge. I left with a mission to build a fortress of financial security that no one, not even family, could breach without my consent. Looking back, I recognized that my drive was fueled partly by ambition, but equally by a deeper need to create the security my family had never provided. Every dollar saved and invested was a brick in a wall protecting me from the conditional support and painful inequality I'd grown up with. What I couldn't have anticipated was how quickly that wall would need to withstand a direct assault from the very people who had unwittingly inspired its construction. Manhattan in August is a crucible of heat and ambition, with thousands of new graduates arriving each year to prove themselves in the financial capital of the world. I arrived with a job offer from Morgan Stanley, a meticulously organized studio apartment in Murray Hill, and a 5-year plan that would have impressed even the most hardened Wall Street veteran. My starting salary as an analyst was $85,000, substantial for a recent graduate, but modest by New York City standards. What my colleagues didn't understand was how I managed to live comfortably while still saving over 60% of my income. My secret wasn't complicated. I lived deliberately small while thinking extraordinarily big. My apartment, while in a decent neighborhood, was a 5th-floor walk-up, barely 400 square feet. I furnished it entirely from Facebook Marketplace and neighborhood stoops on garbage day, finding quality pieces discarded by wealthier residents, upgrading their decor. I packed lunches every day, knew every happy hour special within walking distance of the office, and became an expert at finding free cultural events around the city. While coworkers complained about being broke despite their shopping sprees at Bloomingdale's, I quietly watched my investments grow. At Morgan Stanley, I quickly established myself as someone willing to take on the projects no one else wanted. When complex analysis needed to be completed over a weekend, I volunteered. When clients in less glamorous industries needed attention, I stepped in. This approach earned me respect from senior managers and access to learning opportunities others missed. Within 18 months, I was promoted to associate, a move that typically takes at least 2 years. The promotion came with a substantial salary increase and bonus structure. Rather than upgrading my lifestyle, I maintained the same frugal habits and directed the additional income straight into my investment portfolio. My strategy had evolved beyond simple stock market investments. I had begun diversifying into rental properties in emerging neighborhoods in Brooklyn, starting with a small 1-bedroom condo, purchased primarily with my bonus. The property required some cosmetic renovations, which I completed myself over weekends before renting it out at a rate that covered the mortgage taxes and still provided positive cash flow. Through these years, my contact with my family remained minimal. Holiday visits and occasional phone calls that invariably included my mother's subtle hints about financial struggles with Mia's education. My sister had switched majors twice, extending her undergraduate years and the associated expenses. My parents never directly asked for money, but the implication that I should contribute hung unspoken in every conversation. I maintained polite boundaries, sending appropriate gifts for birthdays and holidays, but never opening my financial life to discussion. As far as my family knew, I was doing fine at a good job in New York. They had no idea that by 27, my net worth had crossed the $1 million threshold, primarily through strategic investments, rental income, and relentless saving. It was around this time that I met Jack Stevens, a portfolio manager at a competing firm whom I encountered at an industry conference. Unlike the aggressive finance bros who populated most Manhattan bars, Jack was thoughtful and genuinely interested in investment strategy rather than status symbols. Our conversation about emerging market trends turned into dinner, which evolved into the most honest relationship I'd ever experienced. Jack came from a stable middle-class family in Michigan, with parents who had supported their children equally and taught all of them financial responsibility from an early age. His healthy relationship with money, seeing it as a tool rather than emotional validation, was refreshing and educational for me. "You're the most financially disciplined person I've ever met," he remarked several months into our relationship. "But sometimes I wonder if you're enjoying the journey or just focused on the destination." His observation was uncomfortably perceptive. While my financial strategy was working brilliantly, I had indeed been deferring almost all pleasure and spontaneity in pursuit of my goals. With Jack's gentle influence, I began to create more balance, still saving aggressively, but allowing occasional splurges on experiences we could enjoy together, like cooking classes or weekend hiking trips. By 29, my career had accelerated beyond even my ambitious projections. I had moved from Morgan Stanley to a smaller, more aggressive investment firm, where I managed a specialized portfolio focusing on technology and renewable energy investments. The position came with significantly higher compensation and carried more responsibility, but the real value was in the autonomy it provided. I could work remotely when needed and had flexibility that would prove crucial in the months ahead. My investment portfolio had grown to include multiple rental properties in New York and Connecticut, a diverse stock portfolio, and stakes in several startup ventures through connections I'd made in the financial world. My passive income from these investments alone would have supported a comfortable lifestyle, making my salary essentially bonus capital for further investments. Throughout this period, my parents' financial situation had been deteriorating in ways they tried to conceal. My father's real estate business had suffered during market downturns, and their lifestyle expenses, particularly those related to Mia's ever-changing career aspirations, hadn't adjusted accordingly. Through industry connections, I discreetly learned that they had taken a second mortgage on the family home and liquidated most of their retirement accounts. During one of my rare visits home, I noticed subtle signs of financial strain. Deferred maintenance on the house, my mother's vintage wardrobe, that I recognized as simply not having been updated, the strategic comments about certain restaurants being too extravagant these days. Never once did they directly discuss these challenges with me or ask for help, though Mia occasionally let details slip about mom and dad helping with rent again this month. Mia, now 24, had graduated with a degree in communications after abandoning both fashion design and her subsequent major in theater arts. She had moved to Brooklyn, ironically to the same neighborhood where I owned two investment properties, to pursue a career as a creative consultant, which seemed to primarily involve maintaining an aesthetic Instagram presence, while our parents subsidized her rent and expenses. I maintained a cordial relationship with my sister, meeting for occasional brunches when my schedule permitted. During these meetings, she would casually mention business ideas that never materialized or complain about the challenges of finding herself professionally. I listened without judgment, remembering that our different approaches to life stemmed from the different expectations our parents had set for us. As my 30th birthday approached in spring, I received an unexpected call from my mother. "We want to do something special for your birthday," she announced with unusual enthusiasm. "Your father and I are planning a family dinner at Le Bernardin. We've already made reservations." The choice of one of Manhattan's most expensive restaurants immediately struck me as odd, given what I knew about their financial situation. More surprising was their sudden interest in celebrating my birthday, which had typically been acknowledged with a card and perhaps a token gift in previous years. "That's really not necessary," I said, genuinely confused by the gesture. "We could do something simpler." "Nonsense," my mother insisted. 30 is a milestone. We want to celebrate properly. Your father has some wonderful news he wants to share as well." In the weeks leading up to this dinner, both my parents became unusually attentive, calling more frequently and asking detailed questions about my work and life in New York. My father, who had rarely shown interest in my career beyond its income potential, suddenly wanted to know about investment strategies and market trends. My mother inquired about my apartment building and whether I was considering buying rather than renting, unaware that I already owned multiple properties. Their newfound interest made me deeply uncomfortable. Having spent my adult life developing a finely tuned radar for financial manipulation, I recognized the signs of people preparing to ask for money. Against my better judgment, I shared basic details about my career success, though I deliberately downplayed my actual financial position. 2 weeks before my birthday, Mia called to confirm she would be attending the dinner. Her tone was odd, nervous, and slightly evasive. "Looking forward to seeing you there," she said awkwardly. "Mom and Dad are really excited about your birthday." "They've never been this excited about my birthday before," I remarked. "Do you know what's going on?" There was a pause before she answered. "I think they just want to celebrate you. Acknowledge your success and everything." The hesitation in her voice triggered alarm bells. "Mia, is there something I should know before this dinner?" No, of course not. It's just a birthday dinner." She changed the subject quickly, asking about my work in a transparently obvious attempt to redirect the conversation. After hanging up, I sat with my growing suspicion that something was very wrong. Years of protecting my finances had made me cautious, perhaps even paranoid, but my instincts had rarely led me astray. I called Jack, who listened to my concerns without dismissing them. "If you're worried, take precautions," he advised. "What's the worst that could happen? You're prepared for nothing, and you enjoy a nice birthday dinner with your family." Taking his advice, I contacted my financial advisor and attorney the next day. Together, we implemented a series of protective measures, additional security protocols on all my accounts, transfer of most liquid assets to newly created accounts under enhanced security, and creation of a single visible account containing $1.5 million, substantial enough to appear to be my primary savings, but representing less than 20% of my actual net worth. "This seems excessive," my advisor commented as we finalized the arrangements. "I hope it is," I replied, "but I'd rather be excessive than exposed." The morning of my 30th birthday arrived with a sense of foreboding I couldn't shake. Jack kissed me goodbye as he left for an early meeting, promising to check in before my family dinner that evening. I spent the day reviewing documents my attorney had prepared, affidavits detailing my account structures and access history, and securing copies of all communication with my parents in recent weeks. As I dressed for dinner that evening, selecting a conservative navy blue dress and minimal jewelry, I tried to convince myself that I was overreacting, that years of emotional distance from my family had made me unnecessarily suspicious. But as I looked at my reflection in the mirror, I couldn't ignore the knot of anxiety in my stomach. Something about this sudden family reunion felt wrong, and I was about to discover just how right my instincts had been. Le Bernardin gleamed with understated luxury, its cream-colored walls and mahogany accents, creating an atmosphere of refined exclusivity. I arrived 15 minutes early, a habit from my professional life that had served me well over the years. The maitre d' escorted me to a private dining area, where a table for four was elegantly set with fine china and crystal. "Your party has already arrived," he informed me with a professional smile. "They're waiting at the bar." I spotted them immediately. My father in a suit that had been fashionable a decade ago. My mother in a beaded cocktail dress I recognized from family wedding photos, and Mia in what appeared to be a new designer outfit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. The contrast between my sister's fresh Louboutins and my mother's well-maintained older wardrobe spoke volumes about the family's financial priorities. "There's the birthday girl," my father called out with uncharacteristic warmth, embracing me with a backslapping hug. 30 years, I can't believe my little girl is 30. My mother air-kissed both my cheeks. "You look lovely, darling. That dress is so professional." Mia hung back slightly, her smile not quite reaching her eyes as she wished me happy birthday. Up close, I could see that her complexion was pale with dark circles under her eyes, partially concealed by makeup. As we were seated at our table, my father ordered champagne, Dom Perignon the most expensive option on the menu, with a flourish that suggested he was playing a role he thought wealthy people should perform. My mother commented enthusiastically on the restaurant's reputation and decor, while Mia remained uncharacteristically quiet, studying the menu with unusual intensity. "So," my father began after the champagne was poured, "how does it feel to be 30, much like 29? I replied evenly. "Just another day, really." "Nonsense," he boomed. 30 is a milestone, a time to take stock of accomplishments. He raised his glass. "To Angela, who has always been our practical, responsible daughter. Your mother and I are so proud of what you've achieved." The praise felt hollow after years of indifference, but I clinked glasses and took a small sip. The champagne, which would have cost half my monthly rent during my early New York days, tasted bitter despite its perfect balance of flavors. Throughout the appetizer course, a delicate scallop creation that my father pronounced worth every penny with a wink toward my mother, the conversation remained superficial. My parents asked about my work, but their questions seemed rehearsed, designed to demonstrate interest rather than genuinely seeking to understand my career. Mia contributed little, responding to direct questions with brief answers before returning her attention to her plate or wine glass. It was during the main course that my father finally reached the purpose of this elaborate celebration. After ordering another bottle of wine, ignoring the sommelier's subtle wince at his selection of an outrageously priced vintage, he cleared his throat and adopted what I recognized as his important announcement posture. "Angela, your mother and I have been thinking a lot about family lately. about legacy and taking care of each other. He reached for my mother's hand across the table in a gesture that struck me as rehearsed. As you know, Mia has been working on launching her wellness brand, focusing on sustainable beauty products. I nodded, though this was actually the first I'd heard of this particular venture. Last I knew, she had been considering opening a boutique yoga studio. The business plan is solid, he continued. But as with any startup, initial capital is the challenge. The family has invested significantly, but to really compete in today's market, she needs a proper launch with marketing inventory, website development, all the things I'm sure you understand from your work with investment portfolios. I kept my expression neutral, waiting for him to reach the point, though I already knew where this was heading. Your sister has so much potential, Angela. This business could be transformative, not just for her, but for all of us. A real family legacy. He paused for effect. Which brings me to our birthday surprise. My mother jumped in, her voice bright with forced enthusiasm. We know how hard you've worked saving all these years. So practical, so disciplined. But money sitting in accounts isn't really working for you, is it? Not like a family business would. A chill ran down my spine as my father continued, his tone shifting to one of confident authority. We've taken the liberty of restructuring some of your finances, he announced as if he'd done me a favor. We've established Mia's business properly, created an LLC with family shares, and transferred funds to secure the necessary resources for launch. What exactly do you mean by transferred funds? I asked quietly, though I already knew. My father smiled broadly. Your primary savings account at Chase, the one you've maintained since college. We've moved $1, $5 million to the family business account. He raised his glass again. Thanks to you, your sister's future is secured, and you'll be a stakeholder in what promises to be an incredibly successful venture. Happy birthday! For a moment, the restaurant seemed to fade away, the ambient noise receding as I processed what I was hearing. My parents hadn't just asked for money, they had taken it. Somehow they had accessed my account without my authorization and transferred a seven-figure sum without my knowledge or consent. How did you access my account? I asked, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. My father waved dismissively. We're your parents, Angela. We've maintained account recovery information since you opened your first bank account. Your mother remembered your childhood password answers. And with your social security number and birth certificate, the bank was quite accommodating. You would have said no if we just asked, my mother added, as if this justified their actions. You've always been so rigid about your money, so unwilling to help the family. You've always been the responsible one, the one who doesn't need support, my father continued. Mia needs this chance, and honestly, you would have just wasted that money sitting on it or putting it into some impersonal investment. Throughout this explanation, Mia stared at her plate, refusing to meet my eyes. When she finally looked up, her expression held a mixture of guilt and defiance. The business is a good investment, she said weakly. I have partnerships lined up with 3 Instagram influencers with over 1 million followers each. The projections look really promising. I took a slow, deliberate sip of water, using the moment to compose myself. Years of negotiating high-stakes financial deals had taught me to never reveal my full hand in moments of crisis. I set down my glass and looked at each of my family members in turn. Then I did something that clearly confused them. I laughed. Not nervously or hysterically, but with genuine amusement that bubbled up from some deep place where shock met absurdity. My family stared at me as if I'd lost my mind. Is something funny? My father asked, his confident smile faltering slightly. Extremely, I replied, still chuckling. You see, what you've just described isn't a birthday gift or a family business opportunity. What you've described is felony bank fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny. The color drained from my mother's face. My father's expression hardened as he tried to maintain control of the situation. Don't be dramatic, Angela. We're family. The money is still in the family, just repositioned for better use. Better use, I repeated. According to whom? We're your parents, my mother interjected. We've always known what's best for the family as a whole. I took another moment to savor the irony of the situation before continuing. You know what's interesting about that account you accessed? It's not my primary savings. It's not even close to representing my actual net worth. It's what's called a decoy account, established on the advice of my financial security team. My father's confident expression wavered. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that I've been aware of your financial difficulties for years. I noticed your sudden interest in my finances weeks ago and recognized the signs of people preparing to ask for money. What I didn't anticipate was that you would actually commit federal crimes to take it without asking. I reached into my purse and removed a slim folder, placing it on the table. This contains documentation of the account you accessed, the security protocols you circumvented, and the fraudulent representations you made to the bank. It also contains a record of the wire transfer you initiated without authorization. Now wait just a minute. My father began, his voice rising slightly before he caught himself, and glanced around the restaurant. He leaned in, lowering his voice to a harsh whisper. Are you threatening us? Your own family? I'm stating facts, I replied calmly. Facts that the FBI's Financial Crimes Division would find very interesting, as would the district attorney. Identity theft over 500,000 carries a minimum sentence of 5 years in this state. Wire fraud adds another potential 10. Mia began to cry silently, mascara tracking down her cheeks. My mother reached for my hand across the table, but I pulled back before she could touch me. Angela, surely we can discuss this reasonably, she pleaded. We're your parents. We raised you, supported you. Did you? I interrupted. Did you really? Because from where I'm sitting, you consistently prioritized Mia's wants over my needs from childhood. You dismissed my achievements, minimized my efforts, and now you've literally stolen from me while justifying it as being for my own good. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. You ungrateful. Careful, I warned. You're currently looking at felony charges. I wouldn't add threatening behavior to the list. I stood up, gathering my purse and the folder. You have exactly 48 hours to return the money to the account you took it from, with interest at the prevailing market rate. You will sign legally binding documents acknowledging what you did and agreeing to financial transparency going forward. If you do these things, I won't press charges. And if we don't? My father challenged, though his voice lacked conviction. I smiled without warmth. Then I'll see you at your arraignment. I hear the food in federal detention facilities leaves much to be desired compared to Le Bernardin. As I turned to leave, Mia grabbed my wrist. Angela, please. They didn't tell me they were going to take your money without permission. They said you had agreed to help, but wanted it to be a surprise announcement at dinner. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw not just the favored child who had benefited from our parents' unequal treatment, but also someone who had been shaped by their manipulation as surely as I had. We'll talk later, Mia, I said quietly. This isn't primarily about you. I walked out of Le Bernardin with my head high, nodding politely to the maitre d' as I passed. Outside, the April evening was cool and clear, the city lights creating constellations against the darkening sky. I took a deep breath of Manhattan air, a mixture of exhaust food from nearby restaurants and the indefinable energy of 8 million people pursuing their individual dreams. My phone buzzed with a text from Jack. How's the birthday dinner going? I smiled as I typed my reply. It was quite enlightening. I'll tell you everything when I get home. As I hailed a taxi, I felt lighter than I had in years. The confrontation I had spent most of my life avoiding had finally happened, and I had emerged with my self-respect intact. The money, in truth, had never been the most important thing. It was what the money represented: security, independence, and freedom from the conditional love that had defined my childhood, that I had been protecting all along. The real gift of my 30th birthday wasn't found in that exclusive restaurant or in the shallow praise of parents who saw me as a resource rather than a daughter. The real gift was the final breaking of chains I hadn't even realized were still binding me to patterns of seeking approval that would never come. As the taxi merged into traffic carrying me back to the home I had built for myself, I understood that financial independence had given me something far more valuable than wealth. It had given me the power to finally stand up for myself without fear of consequences, to be the advocate that the child version of me had always needed. The 48 hours following my birthday dinner were a study in familial panic. My father called 17 times in the first day alone, his messages evolving from righteous indignation. "How dare you speak to us that way after everything we've done for you?" to desperate bargaining. "Perhaps we can discuss a structured investment with proper returns." And finally, to defeated acceptance. "Tell us what you need us to sign." My mother's approach was more emotional, with tearful voicemails about family loyalty and how my overreaction was breaking her heart. She invoked my grandparents' childhood memories and even suggested that hormonal imbalances might be affecting my judgment. Anything to avoid acknowledging the gravity of what they had done. Mia contacted me separately, requesting to meet in person. We arranged to have coffee at a neutral location, a small cafe in Greenwich Village, far from our usual haunts. She arrived looking exhausted, her usual carefully curated appearance replaced by minimal makeup and casual clothes. When the waitress brought our order, espresso for her, herbal tea for me, Mia wrapped her hands around the mug as if seeking warmth despite the mild spring day. "I didn't know," she began without preamble. "About them taking the money, I mean. They told me you had agreed to invest in my business idea. It was only when I saw the transfer receipt with your account information that I realized something was off. By then, they had already moved most of it into the business account they set up." I studied my sister's face, looking for signs of the manipulation I had grown so accustomed to detecting in our family dynamics. What I saw instead was genuine distress and shame. "The worst part," she continued, "is that I was excited about the business. For once I thought I had found something I could actually succeed at. But not like this." She looked up, tears forming. "I never wanted to build something on stolen money, especially not yours." "What about the business idea?" I asked, more curious than accusatory. "Is it something you're genuinely passionate about, or is it just the latest in a series of interests?" Mia flinched at the implied criticism, but answered honestly. "It started as just another idea, but the more I researched it, the more excited I became. There's a real market gap for sustainable beauty products with transparent sourcing. I've been developing formulations with a cosmetic chemist for months." Her enthusiasm as she described the business concept seemed genuine. For perhaps the first time in her adult life, Mia had found something that truly engaged her beyond the surface level. "Did you know about Mom and Dad's financial problems?" I asked, changing the subject. She nodded slowly. "Not the full extent, but I knew things were tight. Dad's business has been struggling for years. They remortgaged the house to pay for my last 2 years of college after some investment thing Dad did went bad. They never talk about it directly, but I've overheard arguments. Yet they continue to support you financially," I pressed. Mia looked down ashamed. "They never said no when I needed help with rent or expenses. I just assumed they were fine because they always made it work somehow." She paused. I should have asked more questions. The conversation shifted to the practicalities of the situation. I explained my requirements for not pressing charges, full restitution, signed acknowledgments of their actions, and a legal agreement regarding future financial boundaries. Mia listened occasionally, asking clarifying questions that revealed she had more business acumen than I had given her credit for. "What about the business?" she asked eventually. "Everything's frozen now because of the legal issues with the account. Is there any way to salvage it?" I considered the question carefully. "Send me your business plan and financial projections. A real one, not whatever inflated numbers you showed Mom and Dad. If it's viable, we can discuss a legitimate investment structure, one based on merit, not family obligation." Her face brightened momentarily before doubt crept back in. "Why would you even consider helping me after everything that's happened?" "Because contrary to what our parents believe, I don't make financial decisions based on emotion or favoritism," I replied. "I make them based on data and potential. If your business concept is sound, it deserves consideration on its merits." As we parted, Mia hugged me awkwardly, perhaps our first genuine embrace in years. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Not just for this, but for everything. For never seeing how unfairly they treated you all these years." The acknowledgement, simple as it was, healed something I hadn't realized was still raw within me. The following day, my parents arrived at my attorney's office with their own lawyer in tow, a college friend of my father's who looked distinctly uncomfortable with the situation. The meeting was clinical and direct. My attorney presented documentation of the unauthorized access and transfer, along with the terms for avoiding criminal charges. My father attempted to negotiate, suggesting that the money could be returned in installments over 5 years, with the family business paying competitive interest. My attorney shut this down immediately. "Mr. Pierce, you seem to be under the misapprehension that this is a negotiation," he said coolly. "Your daughter is offering you an opportunity to avoid federal prosecution for crimes to which you have effectively confessed. The terms are non-negotiable." My mother tried a different approach, turning to me with tears welling in her eyes. "Angela, sweetie, can't we discuss this as a family without all these legal complications?" "The time for family discussions was before you committed federal crimes," I replied evenly. "Now we're well into legal territory." In the end, they signed everything. The money was returned with interest within the agreed time frame. They signed affidavits acknowledging their unauthorized access to my accounts, using fraudulently obtained information. And they agreed to financial transparency going forward, including regular disclosure of their financial situation to a neutral third party who would alert me to any concerning patterns. As we concluded the meeting, my father attempted one last emotional appeal. "I hope you're satisfied," he said bitterly. "Your own parents humiliated like criminals." I met his gaze directly. "You are criminals. You committed multiple felonies. The only reason you're not being prosecuted is because I'm choosing family loyalty over justice, the very loyalty you exploited to steal from me." Their departure from my life was not the clean break I had once imagined during my darkest moments of childhood resentment. Instead, it was a gradual recalibration of boundaries and expectations. We still exchanged obligatory holiday greetings and occasionally spoke by phone, but the pretense of normal family relations had been stripped away, revealing the transactional nature of their interest in me. In a strange way, this honesty was refreshing. I no longer had to pretend that my achievements mattered to them beyond their potential financial benefit. They no longer had to feign interest in my life beyond its economic dimensions. We had reached a state of clear-eyed understanding that, while not warm, was at least authentic. My relationship with Mia evolved in unexpected ways. After reviewing her business plan, which showed surprising thoroughness, I connected her with a legitimate business mentor and provided a structured investment that included accountability measures and performance benchmarks. Her sustainable beauty line launched 6 months later, with modest but encouraging initial results. More significantly, Mia began therapy to address the patterns our family dynamics had instilled in her. As she gained insight into how our parents had manipulated both of us in different ways, me through neglect, her through excessive indulgence, we developed a tentative friendship based on shared understanding rather than obligation. "I always thought you had it easy with your clear direction and confidence," she admitted during one of our now regular coffee meetings. "I never realized how hard you had to work for everything while I was handed whatever I wanted." "And I always thought you had it easy with their unconditional support and affection," I countered. "I never considered how their expectations might be limiting in a different way." The most profound change, however, was internal. The hypervigilance around money that had defined much of my adult life began to ease. With Jack's encouragement, I started working with a financial therapist to untangle my complex relationship with wealth and security. "Money was never just money for you," the therapist observed during one session. "It was the substitute for the emotional security your parents failed to provide. Now that you've confronted that directly, you have an opportunity to redefine your relationship with wealth on your own terms." On my 31st birthday, I chose to celebrate quietly with Jack and a few close friends at our apartment. There were no elaborate restaurants, no grand gestures, just genuine connection with people who valued me for who I was rather than what I could provide. As I blew out the candles on a cake Jack had baked himself with decidedly mixed results that we laughed about together, I made a silent wish not for more security or success, but for continued growth, in distinguishing between the wealth that could be measured in dollars and the richness that couldn't. 3 months later, I established the Financial Literacy for Young Women Foundation, using a portion of my investment proceeds to fund educational programs for girls from disadvantaged backgrounds. The curriculum included not just practical financial skills, but also modules on recognizing and responding to financial manipulation and establishing healthy boundaries. At the Foundation's first fundraising event, I shared my story publicly for the first time, not to shame my family, but to illuminate the complex ways that money and emotional health intersect, particularly for women. The response was overwhelming, with dozens of attendees approaching me afterward to share similar experiences with family financial dynamics. Jack proposed that December, not with an extravagant diamond, as might be expected in our financial circles, but with a simple band containing a small emerald that had belonged to his grandmother. "I know you don't measure value the way others do," he said as he knelt before me in our living room, no audience but ourselves. "This ring represents a promise based on trust, not price tag." As I accepted, I realized that my journey to financial independence had ultimately led me to something more valuable: the emotional independence to recognize and accept genuine love that came without conditions or calculations. My parents' attempted theft, while traumatic, had become the catalyst for this final stage of healing. In trying to exploit my financial success, they had inadvertently freed me from the last vestiges of seeking their approval. Their betrayal had become my liberation. Looking back from this vantage point, I can now recognize that my obsessive focus on financial security was both a strength and a limitation. It protected me from external harm, but also erected barriers to authentic connection. The painful lesson of my 30th birthday, that money alone cannot shield you from betrayal by those who should love you most, ultimately opened the door to a more balanced perspective. True security, I've learned, comes not just from diversified investments and robust savings, but from relationships built on mutual respect and genuine care. My financial independence gave me the freedom to choose these relationships carefully, without the pressure of necessity or obligation. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members over money issues? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of financial empowerment. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to protect themselves and their resources from exploitation, even from family. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember, sometimes the most valuable investment you can make is in your own self-worth.